The first thing Daniel Harper noticed wasn't the wolf. It was the way the birds had gone quiet. Daniel was 56, a forest ranger who had worked the northern edge of the Bitterroot National Forest in western Montana for nearly 3 decades. Late March usually brought a slow thaw. Snow still rested in the shadows, but the cabin porch had begun to drip steadily in the afternoons. That morning, just after sunrise, he stepped outside with a tin mug of coffee. The air carried the faint scent of wet pine. Somewhere beyond the tree line, a branch snapped. He paused. Wildlife moved through these woods every day. Elk crossed the service road. Foxes slipped along the fence. But this was different. The birds weren't scolding or shifting. They were simply still. Then he saw her. At the edge of the clearing, near the woodpile, a gray shape stood half-hidden between 2 spruce trees. She wasn't moving forward. She wasn't retreating either. She was just standing there. Her head was lowered. One front paw hovered slightly above the ground before settling again. Daniel set his mug down on the porch rail. He didn't step closer. He simply watched. The wolf took 2 slow steps into the open. She was thinner than she should have been for late winter. Her coat, once thick and full, lay flat against her ribs. Snow clung to the fur around her legs. When she shifted her weight, her back leg didn't follow smoothly. It dragged just a fraction before catching up. Daniel noticed something else. Her belly was rounded. Not from winter feeding. From something else. She was pregnant. The wind moved gently through the clearing. The wolf's ears twitched, but she didn't look toward the trees. Her eyes stayed fixed on the cabin. Not aggressive. Not panicked. Just steady. Daniel felt the quiet stretch between them. He'd seen wolves before, but never this close to his porch. Never alone. Never this still. She took another step, then lowered herself slowly onto the snow. Not collapsed. Just lowered. Her sides rose and fell faster than they should have. Daniel stepped back inside. He closed the door gently and stood for a moment, letting his breathing slow. He reached for the radio on the kitchen counter but didn't turn it on yet. Through the window, he could see her resting near the woodpile. He pulled on his boots again and grabbed an old wool blanket from a hook by the door. Then he stopped. Too close could make her bolt. Too much movement could stress her. He opened the door halfway and stepped onto the porch, keeping distance. "Easy," he said softly, though he wasn't sure who the word was for. The wolf lifted her head. Her ears flicked back, then forward again. She didn't bare her teeth. She didn't try to stand. Daniel walked slowly down the porch steps, stopping well short of her. He set the blanket down several yards away on a patch of cleared ground. He backed up again. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The forest seemed to lean in around them. A drop of melting snow slid from the roof and hit the ground beside him. The sound felt louder than it was. The wolf shifted her front paws, pressing them into the snow as if testing something. Then she pushed herself upright, carefully, favoring the injured leg. She moved not toward the trees, but toward the blanket. Not quickly, just steadily. Daniel exhaled without realizing he'd been holding his breath. She reached the blanket and lowered herself onto it with visible effort. Her breathing slowed slightly when she settled. Daniel stayed where he was. 5 yards. Maybe 6. He crouched down to make himself smaller. The snow dampened the knees of his jeans, but he didn't adjust. The wolf's eyes met his once. Not for long. Just a glance. Then she rested her head against the wool. Time stretched in a way it sometimes does in the woods. No rush. No noise from the road miles away. Just wind through pine needles and the steady rhythm of her breathing. Daniel keyed his radio quietly and called a regional wildlife biologist stationed 30 miles south. His voice remained calm. Factual. Injured adult female wolf. Likely pregnant. Near cabin perimeter. Non-aggressive. He listened to the reply, nodding slightly. Copy that. I'll keep distance. When he set the radio down, the wolf had shifted again. She adjusted her hind leg carefully, as though protecting it. She wasn't asking for touch. She wasn't asking for anything obvious. But she had come here. The wildlife team arrived just over an hour later, their truck tires crunching softly along the service road. They moved slowly, speaking in low voices. A mild sedative was administered from a safe distance. No rush. No panic. Daniel stood back near the porch, hands in his jacket pockets. The wolf's body relaxed gradually as the medication took effect. Even then, she didn't fight. She simply grew still. For a moment, before they loaded her carefully into the transport crate, her eyes opened halfway. She looked toward the cabin, toward the clearing, toward him. Then they closed. The cabin felt larger that evening. Daniel cleaned the empty mug from the porch rail and folded the blanket she had lain on. A faint outline remained pressed into the wool. The wildlife team later confirmed what he'd already suspected. A minor fracture in her hind leg. Manageable. She was late in her pregnancy but stable. They would keep her under temporary care at the regional rehabilitation center until she delivered. After that, if her strength returned, they planned to release her back into protected territory deeper in the forest. A few weeks passed. Spring moved in quietly. Snow retreated from the clearing, revealing flattened grass beneath. Daniel found himself looking toward the tree line each morning without meaning to. One afternoon, the wildlife biologist stopped by the cabin on her way through the district. She delivered 3 healthy pups, she said, brushing pine needles off her jacket. Strong little ones. Daniel nodded once. They'll stay a few more weeks, she added. Then we'll return them north of here. He thanked her and watched the truck disappear down the road. That night, he stood on the porch again with his coffee. The birds were loud this time, arguing over nesting spots. The clearing looked the way it always had. But Daniel's eyes drifted toward the same pair of spruce trees at the edge of the woods. He didn't expect to see her again. That wasn't the point. Somewhere beyond the ridge, a wolf pack would be adjusting to spring. Pups would be finding their legs. A mother would be moving carefully at first, then more confidently. The forest carried on, as it always did. Daniel finished his coffee and went back inside, closing the door gently behind him. Outside, the wind shifted through the pines, and the clearing remained quiet.